Have you ever been cast aside by someone you raised with your own hands? Have you ever watched your child choose strangers over the woman who gave him life? I'm Margaret Chen. And I'm about to tell you how one birthday celebration turned into the most devastating betrayal of my life, and how karma served justice faster than I could have ever imagined. What happened in that hotel room 1 hour after my son kicked me out will shock you. Stay with me, because this story will make you question everything you know about family loyalty. The morning of my 65th birthday started like any other Saturday. I woke up in my small bedroom at my son David's house. The same room I'd occupied for 3 years since my husband passed away. Through the thin walls, I could hear my daughter-in-law Jessica moving around in the kitchen, her footsteps deliberate and heavy. Something felt different that morning. The air itself seemed thick with tension. I got dressed carefully, putting on the navy blue dress David had bought me last Christmas. It still had the tags on it when he gave it to me, and I'd saved it for a special occasion. What could be more special than my birthday? I thought maybe, just maybe, they had planned something small for me, a cake, perhaps, some flowers. I wasn't asking for much. After 3 years of helping raise their 2 children, cooking meals, and keeping their house running while they both worked, I felt I deserved at least an acknowledgement when I walked into the kitchen. Jessica was standing by the counter with her phone pressed to her ear. She looked up at me with those cold green eyes and immediately turned away, lowering her voice. The children, Tommy and Sarah, were already at the table eating cereal. Tommy, who was 8, gave me a small smile. Sarah, only 5, jumped up and ran to hug my legs. Grandma, is it really your birthday? She squealed before I could answer. Jessica snapped, Sarah, sit down and finish your breakfast, now. The child's face fell, and she shuffled back to her seat. My heart ached watching her shrink away from me. Jessica had been doing this more and more lately, creating distance between me and the grandchildren. Any warmth between us had evaporated months ago, though I couldn't pinpoint exactly when or why. David appeared in the doorway, his tie loosened, his face already showing signs of stress even though it was barely 8 in the morning. He worked in finance, long hours, always exhausted. He barely looked at me as he grabbed his coffee mug and kissed Jessica on the cheek. David, I said softly, good morning, son. He grunted something that might have been a greeting and sat down. At the table, the silence that followed was suffocating. I busied myself making toast, trying to ignore the elephant in the room. Nobody had mentioned my birthday, not a single word. Finally, as I sat down with my own plate, David cleared his throat. Mom, we need to talk. My stomach dropped. Those 4 words never led anywhere good. Jessica moved to stand behind him, her hand on his shoulder, a united front. I noticed she was dressed up, wearing a cream-colored pantsuit I'd never seen before. She looked like she was preparing for battle. What is it? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. David wouldn't meet my eyes. He stared at his coffee cup as he spoke. Jessica's parents are coming to visit today. They're flying in from Seattle, and they'll be staying for a week. Oh, I said, relief washing over me. That's wonderful. I'll make sure the guest room is ready. I can cook something special for dinner tonight to welcome them. No, Mom. David's voice was firm, almost harsh. That's the thing. They're staying in the guest room, your room. The toast in my hand suddenly felt like cardboard. I don't understand. Jessica spoke up, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. Margaret, you see, my parents are elderly. They need a proper bedroom with a real bed. That pull-out couch in the den just won't do for a week-long stay. You understand, don't you? I looked at David, waiting for him to defend me, to explain that this was some kind of misunderstanding. But he just sat there, jaw clenched, saying nothing. Where will I sleep? I managed to ask. David finally looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes broke something inside me. There was no love there, no gratitude for all the years I'd sacrificed for him. Just cold indifference, and perhaps even resentment. "We've booked you a hotel room for the week," he said, pulling an envelope from his pocket and sliding it across the table. "The Riverside Inn, downtown. It's all paid for. You'll be comfortable there." I stared at the envelope like it was a snake about to strike. "You're sending me to a hotel on my birthday." The last two words came out as barely a whisper, but they hung in the air like an accusation. Jessica's face tightened. David had the decency to look away. "It's just for a week. Mom, don't make this into a big drama. Jessica's parents are important guests, and we want to make them feel welcome in our home, not your home too." The distinction was clear. I sat frozen in that kitchen chair, my entire world crumbling around me. Sarah had started crying softly, sensing the tension even if she didn't understand it. Tommy was staring at his cereal bowl, his small shoulders hunched. These were the children I'd cared for since they were babies. I'd walk Sarah through her first steps in this very kitchen. I'd helped Tommy with his homework every single night while his parents worked late, and now I was being erased from their lives as if I'd never mattered at all. "Jessica's parents are important guests," I repeated, my voice shaking. "And what am I? What have I been for the past 3 years?" Jessica's mask of politeness slipped for just a moment, and I saw the cold calculation beneath. "Your family, Margaret. But you're also living here out of our generosity. My parents are visiting. There's a difference." The word generosity hit me like a physical blow. After my husband Michael died, I'd been lost, drowning in grief and medical bills he'd left behind despite his insurance. David had insisted I move in with them. He'd said it would be temporary, just until I got back on my feet. But then Jessica got a promotion, and suddenly they needed full-time childcare. I'd stepped in willingly, lovingly, believing I was helping my family. I'd cooked 3 meals a day, cleaned the entire house, did everyone's laundry, and raised those children while their parents pursued their careers. And now I was being told it was all generosity on their part, that I should be grateful. "I've been helping you both for 3 years, I said, my voice growing stronger. "I've asked for nothing except a place to sleep and to be near my grandchildren. And on my birthday, you're throwing me out for people who haven't visited once in all this time." David slammed his hand on the table, making everyone jump. "Enough, Mom, you're being unreasonable. It's 1 week. Jessica's parents haven't been able to visit because of her father's health issues. Now they're finally able to travel, and yes, we want to give them the best accommodations we can. The hotel is nice. You'll enjoy the break." "A break from what?" I asked bitterly. "From being your unpaid nanny and housekeeper." Jessica's face flushed red. "How dare you? We let you live here rent-free." "Let me." I stood up, my legs shaking, but my spine straight. "I'm your husband's mother, your children's grandmother. This isn't a transaction, Jessica. This is supposed to be family." "Well, maybe it's time we clarified some things about this arrangement," Jessica said coldly. She walked to a drawer and pulled out a folder I'd never seen before. She opened it and spread several papers across the table. "These are the market rate costs for the services you've been providing: full-time childcare, cooking, and housekeeping in this area. It comes to about $4,500 a month. Now, let's look at what you've been contributing. $0 in rent, $0 for food, $0 for utilities." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She'd actually calculated my worth to them down to the dollar. "By my math," Jessica continued, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "we've been providing you with far more value than you've been providing us. So let's not talk about who owes whom, shall we?" David said nothing. He just sat there, letting his wife humiliate his mother on her birthday. That silence hurt worse than any words could have. I picked up the envelope with trembling hands. Inside was a hotel key card and a note with an address. Nothing else. No birthday card. No apology. Just directions to my temporary exile. I need to pack, I said quietly. Their flight lands at 2. Jessica said, checking her phone, so if you could be gone by noon, that would be ideal. I need time to prepare the room. I walked to my bedroom. In a daze, this small room had been my sanctuary for 3 years. I decorated it with photos of my grandchildren, with the quilt my mother had made me. With Michael's favorite book on the nightstand, now I was being told it wasn't really mine at all. It was just a space I'd been allowed to occupy until I was no longer useful or convenient. I pulled out my old suitcase from the closet and started packing mechanically. Clothes, toiletries, my medications, my phone charger. As I packed, I heard Jessica outside the door, already stripping the sheets from my bed, erasing any trace of me. Tommy appeared in my doorway, tears streaming down his face. Grandma, please don't go. I don't want you to leave. I knelt down and hugged him tightly. It's okay, sweetheart. I'll only be gone for a little while. But why? Why do Aunt Jessica's parents get your room? You live here. Tommy, Jessica's sharp voice cut through our moment. Come help me in the kitchen. Now he was torn away from me, and I was left alone again. I finished packing in silence, taking only what I absolutely needed. I left all the photos on the wall, the quilt on the chair, Michael's book on the nightstand. Some naive part of me still believed this was temporary, that in a week I'd be back, and everything would return to normal. By 11:30, I was standing in the foyer with my suitcase. David was in his study, door closed. Jessica was in the kitchen, deliberately avoiding me. The children were nowhere to be seen, probably sent to their rooms to avoid an awkward goodbye. I called an Uber, not wanting to ask David for a ride and give him another opportunity to reject me. As I waited by the door, I took one last look at the house I'd called home, the living room where I'd played countless games with Tommy and Sarah, the kitchen where I'd baked cookies every Sunday, the backyard where I'd pushed Sarah on the swing until my arms ached. All of it was being taken from me because I was less important than impressing in-laws who'd never bothered to visit before. The Uber arrived. I walked out without saying goodbye because no one came to see me off. As the car pulled away, I allowed myself one look back. Jessica was already at the window of my former room, pulling down my curtains. The Riverside Inn was exactly the kind of budget hotel you'd expect from someone trying to check a box without spending too much money. The lobby smelled like industrial carpet cleaner and stale coffee. The clerk at the front desk barely looked at me as she processed my prepaid reservation and handed me a key to room 237 on the second floor. I rode the elevator up, my suitcase feeling heavier with each floor. Room 237 was at the end of a long, dim hallway. When I opened the door, I was greeted by a space that could generously be described as functional. A queen bed with a floral comforter that had seen better days, a small desk with a wobbly chair, a TV bolted to the wall, and a bathroom barely big enough to turn around in. This was where I would spend my 65th birthday, alone in a cheap hotel room while my son entertained his in-laws in my bed, in my room, in the home I'd helped maintain for 3 years. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally allowed myself to cry. Not gentle tears, but huge, racking sobs that came from somewhere deep inside. I cried for Michael, who would have been horrified to see our son treat me this way. I cried for the grandchildren I might be losing, but most of all, I cried for myself, for the fool I'd been to think that love and sacrifice meant anything in the face of convenience and social climbing. My phone buzzed. For a moment, my heart leaped, thinking maybe David had come to his senses, maybe he was calling to apologize, but it was just a text from my phone carrier about my data usage. I looked around the sterile hotel room and made a decision. I wasn't going to sit here and wallow. I was going to go downstairs to that mediocre hotel bar and at least have a birthday drink. I deserved that much. The bar was nearly empty at 2 p.m. on a Saturday. Just a businessman in the corner on his laptop and a young couple having a late lunch. I took a seat at the bar and ordered a glass of white wine. The bartender, a woman in her 40s with kind eyes, smiled at me, celebrating something. She asked, noticing my dress, "It's my birthday," I said, surprised by how bitter I sounded. "Well, happy birthday." "This one's on the house then," she winked and poured me a generous glass. We chatted for a bit. Her name was Rita, and she'd been working at the Riverside Inn for 15 years. She had 3 grown children and 5 grandchildren. She told me stories about the various guests she'd met over the years, and for a little while, I forgot about my own troubles. I was on my second glass of wine when I heard a commotion in the lobby. Raised voices, arguing. Rita and I both turned to look. Through the doorway, I could see a couple in their late 60s standing at the reception desk. The woman was impeccably dressed in designer clothes, her silver hair perfectly coiffed. The man wore an expensive suit and had the bearing of someone used to getting his way. They were berating the poor desk clerk about something. "This is unacceptable," the woman was saying, her voice shrill. "We specifically requested a king suite, not this closet." My blood ran cold. I recognized that voice from phone calls I'd overheard. Jessica's mother. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Whitmore," the clerk was saying, "but we don't have any king suites available. As I explained, your reservation was made very last minute, and we're at near capacity this weekend due to the business conference." "Last minute," Mr. Whitmore bellowed. "Our daughter made this reservation weeks ago." Rita leaned over to me. "Those two are going to be a handful. Bet you $20 they demand to speak to the manager within 5 minutes. But I wasn't listening. My mind was racing. Jessica's parents were here, at this hotel, but they were supposed to be staying at David's house, in my room. Why were they checking into a hotel? I watched, frozen, as the situation at the desk escalated. Mrs. Whitmore was now demanding a full refund and threatening to report the hotel to various review sites. Mr. Whitmore was on his phone, presumably calling Jessica, and then it hit me like a freight train. The whole thing had been a lie. Jessica never intended for her parents to stay at the house. She'd sent them to a hotel too. She'd just used them as an excuse to get rid of me. But why? What was the real reason she wanted me gone? I stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over my wine glass. "Rita, I need to go. Thank you for the drink and the company." She looked concerned. "Are you okay? Honey, you look like you've seen a ghost." "Something like that," I muttered, already heading for the elevator. Back in my room, I paced frantically, trying to piece together what was happening. If Jessica's parents weren't staying at the house, then who was, or what was Jessica planning? That required me to be absent. I couldn't just sit in that hotel room with questions burning through my mind. I needed answers. I grabbed my phone and called David's number. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Same result. He'd either turned off his phone or blocked my calls. Fine. If he wouldn't answer, I'd go there in person. I had every right to know what was really going on in a house I'd called home for 3 years. I ordered another Uber, my hands shaking as I typed in the familiar address. During the 20-minute drive, I rehearsed what I would say. I tried to prepare myself for confrontation, but nothing could have prepared me for what I was about to discover. The Uber dropped me off at the end of the street. I didn't want to pull up directly in front of the house in case someone was watching. As I walked up the sidewalk, I noticed several unfamiliar cars parked in front of my son's house. A sleek Mercedes, a BMW, and a Range Rover. These weren't the modest vehicles of extended family coming for a simple visit. I used my key to open the front door quietly. The house was filled with voices and laughter, the clinking of glasses. I could smell expensive catering, not home cooking. As I stepped into the foyer, I froze. The living room had been completely transformed. Gone were the children's toys, the family photos, the comfortable, lived-in feel. Instead, the space looked like something out of a magazine. Elegant flower arrangements on every surface, mood lighting, sophisticated jazz playing softly in the background, and people. At least 20 people I'd never seen before, all dressed in cocktail attire, holding wine glasses and chatting in clusters. Jessica appeared from the kitchen, looking stunning in a black cocktail dress I knew cost more than my entire wardrobe. She was laughing at something a distinguished-looking man was saying, touching his arm in that way that suggested intimacy and confidence. Then she saw me. The blood drained from her face. The wine glass in her hand wobbled. For a moment, we just stared at each other across the transformed living room. "Margaret," she said, her voice tight, "what are you doing here?" The conversations around us began to die down as people noticed the tension. David emerged from the kitchen with a tray of appetizers and nearly dropped it when he saw me standing there in my simple navy dress, completely out of place in this sophisticated gathering. "Mom," he hissed, setting down the tray and rushing over to me. "What are you doing here? You're supposed to be at the hotel. I could ask you the same thing," I said, my voice trembling but loud enough for others to hear. "What is all this? Who are these people?" Jessica recovered her composure quickly. She plastered on a smile and turned to her guests. "Everyone, this is Margaret, David's mother. She was supposed to be out of town this weekend. Mom, we're hosting a very important networking event for my company. I would have told you about it, but it was somewhat last minute." The lies flowed from her mouth so smoothly, I almost admired the skill, almost. "Last minute," I repeated. "This," I gestured at the elaborate setup, the catered food, the professionally arranged flowers. "This took planning, Jessica. This took time. How long have you been planning this?" A woman with sharp features and expensive jewelry stepped forward. "Jessica, darling, is everything all right? Should we perhaps give you a moment?" No, everything's fine," Jessica said quickly. "Margaret was just leaving." "David, could you help your mother find her way out?" David took my elbow, trying to guide me back toward the door, but I planted my feet. 3 years of being accommodating, of biting my tongue, of accepting less than I deserved, all came bubbling up in that moment. "I'm not going anywhere until someone tells me the truth," I said firmly, shaking off David's hand. "Your parents, Jessica, where are they really staying?" Jessica's perfect smile faltered. Several guests were now watching our exchange with undisguised interest. "What are you talking about?" Jessica said, but her voice had lost its confidence. "I saw them, Jessica, at the Riverside Inn, the same hotel you sent me to. They were checking in, complaining about their room, so clearly they're not staying here in my bedroom like you claimed. So tell me, what was the real reason you needed me gone?" The silence in the room was deafening. David looked like he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. Jessica's carefully constructed facade was cracking before my eyes. One of the guests, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit, cleared his throat. "Jessica, I think perhaps we should reschedule this gathering. There seems to be some family business to attend to." "No," Jessica said desperately. "No, please. Everyone stay. This is just a misunderstanding. Margaret is confused. She's been having some memory issues lately." "I am not confused," I said, my voice rising. "And there's nothing wrong with my memory. You lied to me, Jessica. You lied to your husband." You kicked me out of my home based on a lie so you could throw a fancy party without the embarrassment of having a live-in mother-in-law round. The words hung in the air like an accusation. Because that's exactly what they were. Jessica's face flushed red and suddenly all her polish and sophistication fell away. Fine, you want the truth. Yes, I wanted you gone for this party. Is that so wrong? Do you have any idea how hard it is to network, to climb the corporate ladder? When people know you have your husband's elderly mother living with you, it makes us look, I don't know, small, unsuccessful, like we can't afford our own space. The gasps from Jessica's guests were audible. Even David looked shocked by his wife's confession, as if he was hearing this reasoning for the first time. I stood there, my heart pounding, as the full weight of her words settled over the room. You were embarrassed by me, I said slowly, each word deliberate. Your corporate image was more important than basic human decency, more important than family. That's not, Jessica started, but I cut her off. Don't you dare try to walk that back now. You said it, in front of all these people. You said I was an embarrassment, that having me in your home made you look small and unsuccessful. David finally found his voice. Mom, Jessica didn't mean it like that. She's just stressed about this event. Her entire management team is here. And what? David, I turned to my son, this man I'd raised, who I barely recognized anymore. And that justifies lying to me, exiling me on my birthday. Let me ask you something. Did you even know it was my birthday today? The silence that followed was answer enough. He'd forgotten. Or more likely, Jessica had made sure he forgot. One of the guests, a younger woman with kind eyes, spoke up softly. I'm sorry, but I can't stay for this. Jessica, I appreciate the invitation, but this isn't right. She set down her wine glass and headed for the door. Her departure seemed to break a spell. Several other guests began making excuses, gathering their things. Jessica watched her important networking event crumble before her eyes. And something in her snapped. This is your fault, she screamed at me, all pretense of composure gone. You've ruined everything. Why couldn't you just stay at the hotel like you were told? Why do you always have to insert yourself where you're not wanted, where I'm not? Wanted, I repeated, my voice breaking. Jessica, I've done nothing but help you for 3 years. I've raised your children. I've maintained your home. I've asked for nothing but a place to sleep and to be near my grandchildren. Help, Jessica laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. You call what you do helping. You undermine my parenting at every turn. You spoil the children. You cook food they actually like. Which makes me look like the bad guy when I'm trying to feed them. Healthy meals. You're always there, always in the way, making me feel like a guest in my own home. The remaining guests were now openly staring. The distinguished older man who'd suggested rescheduling spoke up again. Jessica, I think you need to stop talking. You're saying things you might regret, but Jessica was past caring. No, I'm tired of tiptoeing around her feelings. Do you know what it's like having your mother-in-law live with you, knowing that she's judging every decision you make, every parenting choice? Every meal you cook or don't cook. I can't relax in my own home because she's always there, watching, criticizing with those sad eyes. I have never criticized you, I said quietly, not once. Every time you've snapped at the children, every time you've chosen work over family. Dinners, every time you've been too busy to read them a bedtime story, I've bitten my tongue and simply stepped in to fill the gap. Because that's what grandmothers do. Jessica, we support, we don't judge. David was looking at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. Jessica, that's enough. Mom's right. She's never said a word against you. Not to me, not to the kids. Of course she hasn't said it to you. Jessica spat, But I see it. I see the way the kids run to her instead of me when they're upset. I see the way they light up when she walks in the room. I see the way you all treat me like the villain of the house while Saint Margaret can do no wrong. And there it was, the real reason for all of this. Jessica wasn't embarrassed by me for her corporate image. She was jealous of the bond I had with my grandchildren. Jealous of the love I gave freely while she was too busy climbing her career ladder. The children love you, Jessica, I said gently, despite everything. They're supposed to love their grandmother too. Love isn't a competition. Easy for you to say, she shot back. You're not the one being replaced. You're not the one whose kids would rather have grandma at their school plays than their own mother. The last few guests were now heading for the door, murmuring uncomfortable apologies. The distinguished older man paused on his way out and spoke quietly to David. I'm Robert Chen, Jessica's division director. I think your wife might want to take Monday off. We'll discuss this situation then. David's face went pale. Jessica seemed to realize what she'd just done, how she'd humiliated herself and potentially damaged her career in front of her boss and colleagues. When the last guest had left, the three of us stood in the ruined party space. The children were still nowhere to be seen, probably locked away upstairs. Hidden like shameful secrets during the fancy party, I think I said carefully that we all need to have an honest conversation about what's really going on in this family. There's nothing to discuss, Jessica said, but her voice had lost its venom. She sounded exhausted. You heard me. You heard how I really feel. Are you happy now? No, I said honestly, I'm heartbroken, not just for me, but for those children upstairs who are growing up in a home filled with resentment and competition instead of love and security. David sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. I've been so focused on work, on keeping Jessica happy, on just getting through each day that I didn't see what was happening. You didn't want to see, I corrected gently. It was easier to go along with Jessica's plans than to stand up for what was right. That's on you. David, you're a grown man. You made a choice. He looked up at me with tears in his eyes. What do I do now? Before I could answer, we heard small footsteps on the stairs. Tommy appeared, still in his pajamas even though it was now late afternoon. He looked at the three of us, at the remnants of the party. And his young face crumpled. Is Grandma leaving? Forever, he asked in a small voice. The question hung in the air. Was I leaving forever? 12 hours ago, I would have said no, that I'd be back after a week, that this was just temporary. But now, standing in that house full of lies and resentment, I honestly didn't know. I opened my arms, and Tommy ran to me. I held him tight, breathing in the little boy's smell of him, this child I'd helped raise, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose tears I'd dried, whose laughter had been my greatest joy for 3 years. Sarah appeared at the top of the stairs, rubbing her eyes. She'd been crying. Why was everyone yelling? She asked. Jessica moved toward the stairs, but Sarah shrank back. That small gesture, that unconscious recoil from her own mother, seemed to break something in Jessica. She stopped mid-step, her hand on the railing, frozen. Come here, sweetheart, I called to Sarah, and she came down slowly, carefully, and curled up next to her brother in my arms. Your mom and dad and I were having a disagreement. I told them honestly, sometimes adults don't handle things the right way, and we said some hurtful things to each other. Are you mad at Mommy? Tommy asked. I chose my words carefully. I'm hurt by some choices that were made. But being hurt and being mad are different things. I love your mommy and daddy very much, and I love both of you more than anything in the world. But you're still going to the hotel. Sarah's voice was so small it nearly broke me. Before I could answer, David's phone rang. He looked at the screen and his face went even paler. It's your parents, he said to Jessica. Jessica grabbed the phone from him and answered. Hi, Mom. Yes, we're what? No, that's not, Mom. Please listen. She moved into the kitchen. But we could still hear her side of the conversation. It was clear her parents had experienced more than just a disappointing hotel room. The desk clerk, in trying to sort out the confusion, had apparently mentioned that their daughter had also made a reservation for someone else at the same hotel. Then Mrs. Whitmore had started asking questions, demanding to see the reservation records, and the truth had come tumbling out. Jessica's parents now knew they'd been lied to. They knew they were supposed to be staying at their daughter's house, but had been sent to a budget hotel instead, and apparently they'd already heard from one of the party guests about the scene that had unfolded. Jessica's voice grew increasingly desperate as she tried to explain, to justify, to smooth things over, but from what I could hear, her parents weren't accepting any of it. Finally, she came back into the living room, her face blotchy from crying. "They're checking out of the hotel," she said to no one in particular. "They're going to stay with my brother instead. They said they can't believe they raised me to be so cruel." She looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time I saw something besides resentment in her eyes. Shame, maybe, or regret, or just the dawning realization of what her actions had cost her. "Mrs. Chen," she said formally, as if we were strangers. "Margaret, I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything," I replied. "Just listen. I'm going to tell you some things, and I need you to really hear them." I settled the children more comfortably in my lap and began. "When I moved in here 3 years ago, I was broken. Your father, your grandfather," I looked at the kids, "had just died after a long illness. We'd spent everything we had on treatments and care. I had nowhere to go, no savings, and I was drowning in grief. David offered me a home, and I accepted gratefully." David was crying now too, silent tears running down his face. "But I didn't come here to be a burden," I continued. "I came here to be useful, to earn my keep, to be near my grandchildren. I've never asked you for money. I've never asked you to take care of me. I've taken care of myself, and I've taken care of your family. You have," David said hoarsely. "Mom, you have. I've been so blind." "Jessica," I turned to my daughter-in-law, "I understand feeling like you're in competition with me for the children's affection, but that's not how love works. These children have enough love in their hearts for both of us. The question is, do we love them enough to put aside our own insecurities for their sake?" Jessica sank into a chair, her expensive cocktail dress looking ridiculous now in the aftermath of the disaster. "I've made such a mess of everything." "Yes, you have," I agreed, because there was no point in lying. "You've hurt me deeply. You've damaged your relationship with your parents. You've embarrassed yourself in front of your colleagues, and worst of all, you've confused and frightened your children. Can you forgive me?" she asked, and she sounded genuinely lost. "I don't know yet," I answered honestly. "Ask me again when I see what you do next. Apologies are just words, Jessica. Actions are what matter." My phone buzzed then, a text from Rita, the bartender. "Hope you're okay, honey. Those awful people from earlier just checked out. Heard them fighting about their daughter in the lobby." Small world. I smiled despite everything. It really was a small world. And karma, it seemed, worked fast. "What are you going to do, Mom?" David asked. "Where will you go?" I stood up carefully, settling the children on the couch. "Right now, I'm going back to my hotel room. I paid for the week, and I'm going to use it. I'm going to have some time to myself to think about what I want."